So this panel, we're going to be discussing the future. The idea here is we've discussed a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems in the world, in the Western world, and we're not going to leave you hanging with just all of our problems. We want to talk about solutions moving forward for the future, for our next generation, and what we see as a positive way of moving forward from the position that we're at. We've been left with what we've been left. How can we move forward? So I'd love to start the panel at the end. We'll work our way down and then keep this as an open discussion. Thank you very much.
You're going to regret this choice, I'm afraid. So initially I looked at the title of this panel and I saw it said something like future stage. And so Amanda and I were starting to think about the future. So my initial framing for this wasn't necessarily confined to the next generation, though I'm happy to talk about that, particularly given I'm involved in trying to educate the next generation and hopefully create a sort of parallel option in contrast to the public education system. But when I think about the future, I'm thinking too about the various means by which we may approach immortality. And it seems to me that as human beings, we have sort of three main options to achieve immortality. One is to be great literary figures. This is beyond the grasp of most of us, I'm afraid. Another is to be saints. And the other is to have children. And Aristotle talks about children as a form of attenuated immortality. It's the way that we pass along some part of ourselves to the future. And having children is, in a sense, a really hope-filled act. Leon Kass has this beautiful line about how it's a symbol of our gratitude for those who came before us that we pass on to the next generation. And Hannah Arendt, I'm going to tee this up for you. Hannah Arendt, who's also a great scholar of totalitarianism, was also very interested in the problem of natality. She didn't have children herself, but she saw declining birth rates and a declining willingness or desire to have children as symptomatic of totalitarianism. So I think when we're looking at and surveying the problems that are confronting us in the world, one of the best responses that we can have to that, beyond trying to be saints, which is good, is also to think about how can we bring forward hope. And I think children are probably, for most of us, the primary means by which we can do that. So I'll just start with that I think children in the next generation is a great, robust way of resisting totalitarianism and symbolizing our hope and our desire to sort of continue things that are good and that are worth living for, even amidst the apparent disorder of the world. What does Hannah Arendt have to say about this, Amanda?
Beautiful. Well, she certainly speaks about the unexpected and how the principle of natality is connected to the hope that comes when something is completely unexpected. And there's this beautiful quotation as well, something unexpected is our only hope. We are not doomed to any kind of outcome. The future is very much within our hands, and she was very focused also on the topic of responsibility. And so I think this is a beautiful point of departure. You've emphasized natality and yeah, that Leon Kass essay, Why Not Immortality? And he speaks about that hope in the subsequent generations. You also mentioned saints, and there's that Leon Bloch quote that the only real sadness in life is not to be a saint.
It's Leon Bloch quoting a poor woman, isn't it? They pass each other in the streets, and she says, there's only one tragedy, to not be a saint. And then she goes off into her vast loneliness.
And then he passes that on for our consideration and edification. And so whether we're considering saints or heroes or martyrs, I think it's the figures who put our attention toward those questions of eternal significance and eternal concern that really do become a basis for the brightness that we see and that we feel. And I think that's part of what we're seeing now with the memorials around Charlie Kirk, how much he was able to point beyond himself, the fact that he was asked in an interview what he would want to be remembered for, and he said, I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. And so when I think about what has given me a horizon and what has given me a sense of identity and rootedness, it really has been the study of saints and heroes and martyrs. And if we're looking to galvanize a kind of moral imagination, remind people who they are so that there's a vision for where we're going, then I think looking at exemplary figures, first and foremost, hopefully we have models and examples in our own lives, but to not have a too narrow horizon, but rather a more expansive vision that can put our attention toward those topics that prepare us for our eternal destiny.
Well, I'm excited about the future, and you mentioned about kids. I'm very blessed to have 3 kids and 11 grandchildren now. And so beautiful, God has blessed us richly in that area. And I guess that's our own grassroots from my family, but I see the grassroots that we have out here across Canada wanting to see change, and homeschooling that's on the rate of rise, and those kinds of things. Even though it was so difficult for us to do homeschooling, and it was my wife doing it, it made such an impact in our kids' lives that each one of them was independent thinkers, and all of them at the time decided not to get the shot, all independently, even though there was 3 different families. But we taught them how to critically think, and that's really, really important. That's where I see the future is not only critical thinking, but to, I got to say, I believe in the Bible from cover to cover and every letter in between, and that's where I get my strength, and that's part of my life, and I'm excited about the future of medical, because we're getting really cool stuff happening out there. There's a lot of grassroots in the medical that wants to do the right thing, and that's cool.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and I'm very familiar with your work, Tom Kerber, of red light therapy, the sun-powered
You're getting it.
LED. I got it, right? Anyway, and I just added that because there is so much technology coming forward, and Tom is one of the pioneers of this that's taking it to another level. Yes, I do believe the children are our future. However, the present has to pave the future. So I feel that
Everybody should get busy.
Well, there's no question the divine spark is our ability to have our children and to have our future laid out through our children, but our present is also the divine spark in all of your hearts. And I hope that we can lay that foundation, and we can all go home and spread the word and lay that foundation with those around us, speak to those around you, because what we do in the present affects our future. It's not just a matter of talking about our children or our future. Like you said, the homeschooling, there's lots of other ways to help prepare people for what's coming for us, coming at us, and what we're dealing with in the world right now. Things are not what they appear to be, and it's actually a time of extreme opportunity, not fear. But once you step away from the fear, you would see the amazing opportunity we all have for changing our future. And yes, creating a new system, calling it parallel or perpendicular, but the system has to be created in order for people to will themselves to be able to start to use it and engage it, because they will not leave the old system until they see something better and something more useful that will help make them feel more resilient, happy. We are not here to be depressed or say how hard our life is. That's not what humanity should be, but it's what we've been fed, and it's the world that we have been born into. But it is time for change, and we are the change makers. We, everybody here in this room and beyond, we are the change makers, and our children are the change makers of the future. And education and knowledge is the source of all of that. And I spend a lot of my time educating not only the students that I have willfully engaged, and I tell them, you are the change makers of the future. Me changing the program doesn't change the future. Each one of you changes the future. And the change makers are the parents and of the children, to enable them to know that they are the guardians and the protectors of their children, and that somebody outside of their family, there are a few people that are engaged enough to care about them, but actually this is from the heart, not from a doctrine. And if everybody realizes that and we all operate from the heart, this will be the new world we step into.
I'm going to pick up on that theme that Jennifer just spoke to, and I'm going to quote one of our beloved leaders, Justin Trudeau, who said, COVID is giving us the opportunity for a reset. And I think that's true. It may not be the reset Justin had in mind. I actually think we are on the edge of standing on the edge of transformation. One of the things that I learned in my journey as a psychotherapist is the importance of suffering. It used to be that I, didn't like my clients suffering, and I would do everything I could to try to stop them from suffering. And then I began to realize that it was through the experience of suffering that they would transform their lives. And I began to say to them, suffering is the gateway to wisdom. And I think humanity collectively over the last 5 years have suffered in some ways more egregiously than maybe we ever have before collectively, which opens up the possibility that we are learning much through the last number of years. For example, I have to say I'm really excited by the conversation about Alberta independence. And I agree with Bruce and others who have said that maybe the way to save Canada is for Alberta to leave Canada. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to reimagine the kind of society we want to live in, the kind of government we want or don't want, the kind of education system we want or don't want. And I really liked when Bruce said, I think it was yesterday, let's not think small about this. Alberta independence isn't just about having lower taxes. We have an opportunity to rethink the foundational values and principles of the society that we want for our children and grandchildren. And I would say that we're beginning to have conversations that we haven't had in my lifetime. And so I'm actually excited about the future that we're going to create. So I look forward to those conversations.
Now, what comes to mind is the old adage from what you said. How does it go? Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create terrible times. And terrible times create strong men. Are we in a cycle? Would you see that as that?
Yeah, and that's what Jeff Everly presented as part of his presentation this afternoon. And I think that's true, that we are, through this adversity, we are discovering our resilience, our courage, our wisdom, our responsibility, our duties. We're having conversations. There was a rich conversation about faith and religion and morality. And I think these are exactly the conversations that we need. We've kind of just, what I say, I don't believe Canada had a 1776 moment where we declared our independence and affirmed who we are and what we are. And maybe this is our time.
In the world we live in, a modified version of what you're saying, there's an expression saying, no pain, no gain. However, I believe these are, and certainly saying by adversity, and all of us have had it in our lives, and yes, we have gained wisdom because we chose to use that as an example to move forward. But this is the world we live in that we were born into, and now it's a time of change. We are going to raise the energy on this planet, and we're going to have new expressions for what being a human being and feeling alive is about. And it won't be about pain anymore, because as I have said before in my talks, we were not born to war. We weren't born to suffer, but because of the world we were born into, it was forced upon us. Now we have to rise above it. We have to learn what that means, understand what's been happening to us, so that and again, that's knowledge, and then raise ourselves above that to make it a better world for everybody. We don't want to see our children suffer. We don't want to see our relatives or our parents suffer. We want to be able to make this a beautiful world where people don't say, gee, it's been so good, what's going to happen? I know it, there must be something coming. I want them to feel that they can say, what a wonderful day, I really look forward to tomorrow, and see how beautiful tomorrow is. And be able to say to yourself, look yourself in the mirror and say, wow, how lucky am I to be here on this earth today? And that's the future that I see for all of us.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So, I mean, this is a beautiful sentiment, to be able to appreciate and show gratitude for what is good when we encounter it, without necessarily cynically anticipating something bad. But do I understand that you said that sort of through our knowledge in the future we can get to a place where the human condition isn't defined by suffering?
Yes, we won't take a position that we expect to suffer. It doesn't mean there won't be evil in the world that will be adverse to what we're doing, that we don't have to stand up against. But people will feel more positive about what their purpose is in the world. A lot of people don't even know what their purpose is, and because they don't, they get depressed and feel like they're not valuable. And I look to hope that they feel very valuable, and there's no question. We're always going to have some degree of conflict coming at us from somewhere, but it is the position that you take and how you address it that will be a much more positive position that you can take. And I would say also, even the future of medicine is going to step that up for people too.
So what's the historical process by which this occurs? Is it through our mastery of techne that we gain the knowledge to overcome suffering, or is it a spiritual insight into the purpose of our life that allows us to bear suffering with equanimity?
I believe it goes hand in hand.
I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we're very curious.
I think in general that the total quantum of suffering that we experience is largely fixed, with one major caveat. I think we suffer in part because, I think we suffer because of the kind of beings we are. And here I defer a lot to the writing of Eric Voegelin, who's a great scholar of totalitarianism also of the 20th century. He was a refugee from Nazi Germany, fled to the United States, and then dedicated his life to understanding the problem of political and philosophical evil. And one of the frameworks he developed, which I find very compelling, is what he calls the modern Gnostics. So Gnosticism is an ancient, largely considered a heresy, a kind of early Christian sect that believed that this world is created by a kind of evil demiurge. That we suffer in this world because this material condition is bad. There's something disordered about the world, but there is a transcendent God above that. And the Gnostics sought knowledge, hence the name, so that they could reunite with this transcendent figure. Now, Voegelin says in this modern framework, modern Gnosticism doesn't have a belief in a transcendent God. It doesn't really have a God at all. But it maintains the idea that this world is fundamentally disordered and that that's the source of our suffering, and that through our knowledge, through our mastery of technology, say, or our mastery of the social sciences, we can overcome suffering. And this is the root of totalitarian ideologies, because they situate the source of our suffering not as a function of the kind of beings we are, that we're fallen, that we have sin, karma, whatever you'd like to call it. Rather, they situate the source of the disorder out there in the world. And they think if only we get power, we can reorder the world with our mastery of knowledge. We can reorder it and perfect it. And so there's no need to look inside. There's no need to try to perfect ourselves, to try to rectify the disorder in our own souls. It's all about externally facing, let's fix the world around us. So he just identifies this as sort of one of the great philosophical errors that characterizes the modern age. So that's to say, I think there is a way to alleviate our suffering, which is we try to be better people. But we suffer on account of the kind of beings we are. We suffer because we wrong others, because we're selfish, and this is a sort of reciprocal cycle. Outside that, I don't think you can much change the quantum of suffering. You can shift it from one source to another. You can choose material comfort and alleviate the physical suffering, but you will suffer in some other way. This is part of the human condition. I think the task before us, the way that we can deal with suffering is we can redeem it by using it to purify ourselves, to temper ourselves, We can try to find meaning in it. We can try to find a way through our suffering to offer comfort to others who suffer. I'll close this little rant, and I know Amanda will want to jump in here, but I've thought a lot about, in the last several years, and I've written a lot about the problem of suffering, and one of my favorite passages comes from Solzhenitsyn, who apprehended, after his 8 years in the Gulag, something of the truth. He wrote, "What about the main thing in life, all its riddles? If you want, I'll spell it out for you right now. Do not pursue what is illusory, property and position. All that is gained at the expense of your nerves decade after decade and is confiscated in one fell night. Live with a steady superiority over life. Don't be afraid of misfortune. Do not yearn for happiness. It is, after all the same. The bitter doesn't last forever, and the sweet never fills the cup to overflowing. And this," he said, "we must grasp in our dark and terrible hour, that our life consists not in the pursuit of material success, but in the quest for worthy spiritual growth. Our entire earthly existence is but a transitional stage in the movement towards something higher, and we must not stumble and fall, and we must not linger fruitlessly on one rung of the ladder."
Beautiful. I like that, and I agree with that. And I believe that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. All right? And I feel that our physical experience has been tainted by what's been working against us, because this is a spiritual war, but we are physical beings, so it's affecting us physically too. So the spiritual side is to help people have a more optimistic position of dealing with their pain and their physical pains that they have, instead of being so pessimistic. And I believe the negative forces around us are driving people to be very pessimistic. Fear is a pessimistic trait. Fear is a pessimistic emotion, and it makes you look negatively at everything in your world. But if you look at this as an opportunity to learn, like you said, when you're psychologically dealing with people, we could gain wisdom if we allow ourselves to open up to it and stop feeling, why me? And you go, well, this is a life experience, this is a physical experience, this is an emotional experience, which is linked with the physical body. But if you raise above that and realize it's a spiritual experience, you actually can look at this in a much broader spectrum, and that's how you gain and raise your frequency. And we can talk about that, and a lot of people go, okay, I don't want to listen to that talk about frequency, but everything in this world has a frequency, and we already know that the quantum field exists, and if we open our hearts and let this come into our world, it's going to make a huge difference for all of us. But yeah, we have to deal with our physical ailments as we have them right now. And I don't deny that. And I know right now we try and make people feel more optimistic about the future. And that's what we're all here talking to you about. We wouldn't be up on this stage if we didn't feel good about what we're doing. And I feel like this is a great time of opportunity. And often in the middle of great chaos, there's this phenomenal energy that starts to grow. And I feel it right now, and it's exciting. It's an exciting feeling. Doesn't mean that there's a lot of awful things going on around us. But, you know, we're all here for each other. And community, and getting down to having a sense of community and communicating with people and just bringing out all of their feelings is going to make things a whole lot better. So I hope we're more on an equal agreement. I like how you're smiling at me now. This is good.
I don't know. I just, from my own personal experience, I can't say I've read the books that you have, but from my own experience, I've gone through some very, very difficult times in my life where I didn't know how to go through each day with the pressures that were going on. And, you know, even the cross of the thought momentarily of even, I need to end my life because it's so difficult. And there was one opportunity at one point. But, you know, I really believe that even through these difficult times, that for me anyways, I turned to the God that I know, and he gave me the hope to keep going. And now that I look back, and I don't have the tapestry in front of me to see, I only still see the backside mostly, with all the knots in it and everything, and you can't figure any of it out. But I can tell you that what I have seen in my life is that he has woven the stuff that I would have never believed I should go through, very, very difficult times. And if it wasn't for those difficult times, I don't believe that the technologies that are coming out would have happened. So the plan, I believe there's a higher purpose that we can go to, a higher call, a reason why we're here, what we have to do to make a difference. And when you do that, when you commit to that, whatever is going on, and that's how I got the hope to get through. And now I'm excited about where things are going. In the midst of COVID, I remember crying for Canada, because of what was going on, and thinking you're all alone. And all of a sudden you start hearing, there's a person, there's a person, there's a person, there's another person, and there's this, Dr. Charles Hoff, and then there's you, and there's all of a sudden we're not alone. And if we work together, phenomenal things can happen.
I'd like to add to that, and then I will not hog the...
Amanda, did you have more to add?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a few reflections to pick up on these various threads. So, first of all, I think we've really got to contend with the reality that to be a person is to be a unity of body and soul, and that this is the inextricable nature of the human person, the unity of body and soul. And when we try and have mastery or superiority of the intellect or the spiritual dimension over the physical, whether in ourselves or in others, that can lead to a dehumanization of either ourselves or others. Because if minds are kind of like distinct substances from bodies, then those minds can manipulate bodies without any limit. And if we have conceits about our kind of intellectual or spiritual dimension being able to conquer our body, that's where we, I think, can see the dualism inherent in even a choice for euthanasia, where people will say, it's my choice, it's my will, it's my autonomy, even over and against my embodiment. And that cannot exist together, because the nature of the person is to be embodied with all the vulnerability and fragility of the human condition that entails. And that could grieve us, or it could become a basis for openness. And just on these points about suffering, I'm thinking of a beautiful quotation that I think is very true about how the redemption of suffering consists really in the drama of suffering being transformed into a drama of love. And therein lies that kind of redemption, when you can bear things because someone is with you, because they have the interest and curiosity to ask, what are you going through? And in Canada, one thing I do really appreciate is that the Health Canada reports on euthanasia list the main kinds of suffering according to people's own admission, leading them to request euthanasia. And the number one kind of suffering by people's own admission is not physical pain, or even the fear of pain, which is put in the same category. It's not even financial or feeling like a burden. Those are all on the list, but the number one kind of suffering leading people to request euthanasia who are actually going through with it is inability to engage in meaningful life activities. So it's a crisis of meaning. And I put forward the question, do we ever lose the capacity to engage in meaningful life activities? Do you feel, when you reflect on the fragility and dependency and disability that you may meet in your life, that you could lose all meaning in life? And that brings us back to the fundamental question, what is so unshakable, what is so inextricable as to give us a ground of our identity and to give us confidence that we always have a place in the world? And I think that can be only in the origin and the destiny of the human person, consisting in loving and being loved.
That's really powerful. Absolutely. Now, please.
I was just saying we're waiting for Clyde to come up with some wisdom here.
So what this makes me think of, and as you were alluding to earlier, was the suffering is an innate thing. And this is what pushes people into ideologies like Marxism, because it was at the end of the day, Marx was a bad economist. He had some failed economic ideas. He thought that there was a possibility of alleviating the problem of scarcity. And scarcity is suffering. So it doesn't matter how well we do economically, there's always going to be scarcity. And this is always a promise that comes about. So how do we avoid that trap of being brought into false promises when it's better to just accept the fact that, suffering is part of our lives?
Well, I think divide and conquer is the name of the game here. So creating community, being together. I always tell parents, even when they're in my clinic, when I'm treating a child, and the parents often sit back and I say, no, come forward, put your hand on your child, make sure they can feel the contact. And if I don't have a parent in the room, I get my assistant to put their hand there. And I know that feeling, and every one of you who've ever had a procedure done, ask the nurse to just put their hand on your shoulder or on your arm. The physical contact, there's a phenomenal connection that makes you able to cope with whatever you have to deal with when you feel that contact. So divide and conquer is the name of their game. They separate you, they make you feel not able to participate in society. I think even when they have retirement homes, I think that's a form of divide and conquer. I know there's situations where families can't cope, but unfortunately it should be set up more as group homes rather than putting it over to the state. You can go in these places and it's like stepping into purgatory. These people are given no purpose in life. And actually linked with all of these homes is MAID. And if they don't have MAID offered in their nursing homes, most of them across Canada don't get financial support. So you see where it's married to each other. So again, creating community and grassroots is what it's all about. At the very beginning of COVID, and when I saw what was going on and trying to work it out, the first connections I actually tried to make beyond trying to find other people that thought the same way as I did was the Indigenous. Because we all know the Indigenous have had connections with the earth and just nature and the universe. And a lot of the groups I initially connected with, I found that they had been corrupted too, and it was sad to see, and this was across the world. And then I connected up with a wonderful group who's bringing in Indigenous leaders across the world. And we have meetings very frequently, and their problems or issues, their court issues, whatever it is, it gets discussed. But I'd like to bring forward to you and let you know that prophecies also come through these Indigenous bands and groups and across the world. And just to raise your feeling of hope is there is a prophecy that says that the light is going to rise and it will start in Canada. And I just hope it sent a tingle through your body when I said that, because this is a belief of the prophecies, and as a prophecy, I believe it's the eagle and the condor. And there are many other prophecies that direct us to North America is where the light will rise. It's where the attack is directed, and it's where the light will rise.
Well, isn't it neat how the truckers' convoy gave so many people hope? I remember how sick I was at that time, and regardless of that, I went out there, and my family was out there, and we were waving the flag over the QEW, and that was fantastic when people get together and share that hope.
It was quite amazing, and especially the talk all the time then was, this is the hill I'll die on. Everybody was saying that, and I'd say, well, this is the hill we'll live on. But we all know that in Ottawa, the Parliament, it's called the Hill, isn't it? So if that's not an indication of the energy that's coming forward from Canada, however apathetic it seems right now, change is coming. And again, because of the environment and the world that we've been born into, we will rise above this. And actually, the more we get suppressed, the more we will rise.